Nighttime Havana doesn't look dangerous. It looks tired. Yellow light falls on the peeling facades of colonial buildings. Old music plays from bars, mixing with the noise of old American cars that should have long been in museums, but here they are part of daily survival. Girls stand near the entrance to a hotel. They don't shout. Don't gesture. Don't look aggressive. They just watch, attentively, evaluating which foreigner has just stepped out of a taxi. Some call them prostitutes. In Cuba they are more often called jineteras, those who try to ride a chance. But behind this word is not a night industry in the classic sense, but an economy that forces people to look for any opportunities to survive. Maria is 23 years old. She studied English at university. She didn't dream of standing near a hotel. She dreamed of being a translator. But her state salary after graduation could be less than one tourist's dinner. So now she is here. She talks to foreigners. Laughs. Shows them the city. Sometimes receives gifts. Sometimes money. Sometimes just a dinner that for her means more than romance. Her story is not an exception. It is part of the city. In the morning, Havana looks completely different. The sun reveals cracks in buildings that seem beautiful only from a distance. Balconies are crooked. Paint is peeling. Laundry dries on ropes between windows. Old people sit on plastic chairs and watch as the street slowly wakes up. There is already a line at the corner. No one knows what will be delivered to the store today: chicken, rice, or eggs. People just wait. Because if you don't stand in line, you might buy nothing. Carlos is a former engineer. He wakes up at 5 in the morning to take a place in line for his mother. His diploma hangs on the wall of a small apartment, but he works as a driver of an old 1956 Chevrolet, taking tourists around. He knows, one day with a tourist brings more money than a month of state work. During the day the city fills with music. 2 men play guitars right on the street. People dance between old buildings as if the economic crisis does not exist. Tourists photograph everything: cars, people, old doors, even cracks in the walls. But walk a few blocks away from tourist zones, and the picture changes. Stores are almost empty. Shelves look as if they were just opened after a move, a few cans, some preserves, sometimes rice. People speak in whispers about where today you can find milk or gasoline. Electricity sometimes disappears for several hours. Elevators don't work. Refrigerators are silent. And then life slows down. Evening is the time of tourism. Restaurants in the old part of the city fill with foreigners. Light, music, dancing, everything looks festive. The menu is in English. Prices are in dollars or an equivalent that for locals seems cosmic. Waiter Luis has a medical degree. He left medicine because a tourist restaurant brings several times more income. He laughs, jokes with guests, brings cocktails, and knows that in one night he can earn more than in a month at a hospital. Night returns the city to the beginning of the story. Maria stands near the hotel again. She talks with a friend who dreams of going to Spain. Police officers walk by calmly, without a scene. Everyone understands what is happening, but the system lives with this reality. Someone meets a tourist and goes to walk around the city. Someone returns home with nothing. Someone just sits on the steps and listens to music from a phone. This is not a glamorous story. This is a story about people who are looking for a way out of a situation where salary does not cover even basic needs. The next day life repeats. Lines. Music. Tourists. Old cars. Dreams of leaving. Young people sit in Wi-Fi parks, watching videos about life in other countries. They see supermarkets with full shelves, new cars, apartments without cracks in the walls, and understand how different their reality is. Some try to start small businesses, home restaurants, room rentals, private tours. But every step is a struggle with a lack of resources. Despite everything, Cuba remains alive. Children play football on narrow streets. Neighbors help each other repair old houses. People laugh even when they talk about difficulties. There is a strange combination here: fatigue and strength at the same time. And while tourists photograph old cars and dances in the squares, another Cuba continues to live its real life, between hope, economic struggle, and the desire for change. Morning in Havana begins earlier than the sunrise. The first to wake are those searching for scarce goods. Women with canvas bags, old men in worn caps, young guys with phones in their hands, all move towards stores without even knowing what will be thrown onto the shelves today. The city is still half dark, but the lines are already formed, as if this were part of a morning ritual. Maria returns home after the night. She quietly climbs the stairs of an old building so as not to wake the neighbors. Her apartment is a small room with a fan that works only when there is electricity. On the table, a kettle, 2 cups, and a phone with a cracked screen. She checks messages. A friend writes that milk has appeared today in one district. She has to hurry. She lies down to sleep for only a few hours. Because in the evening, again the center, again the hotels, again conversations with people who flew in for a few days of vacation, not even imagining what an ordinary Cuban morning looks like. In Carlos's apartment it smells of coffee, strong, diluted, saved down to the last bean. His mother listens to the radio, where they talk about new economic reforms. He is already on his feet. Today he has a private tour for a couple from Canada. The old Chevrolet doesn't start on the first try, but that is normal. The car is older than he is. He knows every street, every story of the buildings, every bar where tourists can feel the real Cuba. He shows them colorful facades, musicians in the squares, people who dance right in the middle of the day. Sometimes he catches himself thinking that he sells an image that he himself sees only partially. Because as soon as the tour ends, he returns to a neighborhood where buildings crack from time and elevators haven't worked for years. During the day, Maria meets her friend Lydia in a small cafe. They sit by the window, share one portion of rice with beans, and talk about life. Lydia says that a foreign acquaintance promised to help with documents for a trip abroad. She doesn't know if it's true, but she holds on to this hope like the only chance to break out of the routine. They laugh, remember university, dreams that seemed real only a few years ago. The conversation turns into silence when the electricity nearby goes out, a usual thing. Fans stop, the cafe becomes stuffy, and people go outside searching for at least a little air. In the tourist quarter, life looks completely different. A bar with neon signs, music playing without pause, cocktails with bright decorations. Foreigners laugh, photograph everything, are surprised by old cars and cheap prices, not understanding that for locals these sums are luxury. Luis brings drinks, jokes in several languages, catches tips from every table. He tells stories about the city, a little truth, a little legend, a little of what guests want to hear. His eyes are tired, but the smile is professional. After his shift he goes outside and sees Maria. They greet each other, briefly, without unnecessary words. Each has their own path in the city's night economy. Night unfolds slowly. Near the hotels gather those who are looking for a chance. Someone simply offers to show the city, someone translates, someone sells cigars, someone tries to start a conversation that may grow into longer acquaintances. Police pass nearby, calmly, without conflicts, as if it were part of the usual landscape. Maria meets a couple of tourists, shows them a bar with live music where an old musician sings songs about love and loss. She translates, laughs, dances for a few minutes, and for a moment forgets about bills, lines, and dark apartments without electricity. But when the night ends, reality returns. In ordinary districts of the city, life continues without cameras and guides. Families sit on balconies, catching the cool breeze. Children play ball under streetlights that may go out at any moment. Neighbors discuss news, exchange food, share stories about relatives abroad who sometimes send parcels with medicine or clothes. Every day is a small victory: to find gasoline, to buy chicken, to fix a fan that overheated from the heat. One evening Maria returns home later than usual. The building is dark, electricity has been turned off for several hours. She climbs the stairs with the light of her phone, listening to the sounds of the city, distant music, barking dogs, voices of people in the street. She sits by the window and looks at Havana, a city that is at the same time beautiful and complicated. She thinks about the future, about the possibility of leaving, about a life that could be different. But tomorrow there will again be morning, lines, music, tourists, and a night that begins with glances. At that time Carlos repairs his car in the yard. Neighbors help, someone brings tools, someone water, someone just stands nearby and jokes. They work together because otherwise it is impossible to survive here. The old engine comes alive with a hoarse sound, a small victory in a country where new parts are almost inaccessible. Havana continues to live between two worlds. The world that tourists see, music, dancing, bars, and retro romance. And the world that locals feel, lines, power outages, the search for opportunities and hope for change. And somewhere between them, people like Maria, Luis, and Carlos, who every day balance between survival and dreams. When tourists return to their air-conditioned rooms, another Cuba is only beginning its evening. In ordinary neighborhoods, people bring chairs out to the street. It's cooler than in apartments, where concrete has absorbed the heat all day. Children run with a ball, older people discuss the news, someone sets up a small speaker and turns on music. The city sounds quieter than the center, but more honest. Maria's apartment is one room, a kitchen without hot water, and a narrow balcony overlooking the roof of the neighboring building. Her mother repairs an old fan, wrapping wires with electrical tape. They joke that in Cuba everyone is a bit mechanic, a bit electrician, a bit psychologist. On the shelf, jars of rice and beans saved for a rainy day. Nearby, a bag of coffee brought by a relative from abroad. Such parcels are like little holidays: medicine, soap, batteries, sometimes new sneakers. Every item has a story and a route across the ocean. In the neighboring building lives the Ramirez family. Their living room serves as a bedroom, dining room, and workspace at the same time. On the wall, photos from graduation, weddings, a portrait of the grandfather in military uniform. When the power goes out, they light candles and tell stories about the times when gasoline was obtained through connections, about relatives in Miami, about plans to open a small home cafe if supplies appear. During outages, the refrigerator is silent. They cook what spoils quickly and share part of the supplies with neighbors so nothing goes to waste. Here, mutual help is not romantic, it's a necessity. The shadow economy breathes between courtyards. In an alley behind the market, a man sells parts for old cars, without signs, without advertising. All retro car drivers know him. Nearby, a woman makes homemade pastries and passes them through acquaintances to tourist bars. Someone trades coffee for soap, someone, gasoline for medicine. Everything relies on trust, rumors, and phone calls. Carlos brings tourists for a photo session on a colorful street, then turns aside, to a friend's workshop. There, from 3 non-working engines, they assemble one. Sweat, heat, and laughter, the mechanics joke that their cars will survive any economy. Nighttime Havana changes rhythm again. The lights of bars reflect in windows, music calls people inside. Maria meets new people, sometimes it's just walks and conversations, sometimes longer acquaintances that bring gifts or dinner invitations. She reads people well, who want stories about the revolution, who dancing, who silence by the sea. Lydia says she submitted documents to leave the country. She is anxious, but dreams of a job where the salary doesn't run out in a week. They stand by the Malecon, watching the waves and imagining life on the other side of the water. Nearby, someone plays the trumpet. The melody dissolves into the night air. Police walk past, calmly, without conflicts. Everyone knows the unwritten rules: don't make noise, don't draw unnecessary attention, don't cross boundaries. In the morning, the city returns to routine. In Wi-Fi parks, young people sit on benches with their phones, catching signal. They watch videos about life abroad: supermarkets with full shelves, apartments with hot water, roads without potholes. The contrast is painful, but gives hope. Someone runs a blog about daily life, someone sells online dance lessons, someone looks for clients for private tours. Luis returns home after a night shift and falls asleep to the sound of fans. He dreams of the hospital where he once worked: white coats, antiseptic smell, grateful patients. He wakes up, checks his phone, tips have arrived. Today he is a waiter again. One day Maria goes to a family lunch. On the table, rice, beans, a bit of chicken, a tomato salad. They eat slowly, savoring each bite. They talk about the future. Her mother wants Maria to return to translation. Her brother dreams of buying a motorcycle. Her aunt recalls the times she worked in a cigar factory. After lunch they go to the roof. From there the sea is visible. The wind carries the smell of salt and gasoline. Somewhere in the center music plays, somewhere in a courtyard children laugh. Cuba is a constant mixture of beauty and difficulty, joy and fatigue. Evening brings new stories. Carlos gets a call. A group of tourists wants the real Cuba. He leads them not only to squares, but to courtyards where people repair furniture, small kitchens where black coffee is brewed, rooftops where teenagers look at the city and dream. The tourists are silent. This Cuba doesn't resemble postcards. Maria decides to just walk this evening. She sits on the Malecon beside a musician playing an old song. They talk about life, choices, about how sometimes you need to stop and look at the city without roles and expectations. Late at night, the electricity goes out. The city plunges into darkness for a few minutes, and only the waves hit the rocks. People bring candles onto balconies, little lights that make the night warmer. Someone tells jokes, someone sings, someone just sits and listens to the sea. When the electricity returns, life moves forward again. And day by day, Havana lives between two rhythms. Between shadow and light, between tourist lights and dark apartments, between dreams of leaving and love for a city that is hard to leave. Maria looks in the mirror before a new night. She sees not only fatigue, but strength, the ability to adapt, find opportunities, laugh even when the fridge is almost empty. She goes outside, where the first chords of music are already heard. Havana begins its story again, a night born from glances and hopes. The morning bus from Havana departs before sunrise. It is old, noisy, with seats that creak over every bump. Inside, a mix of smells, coffee, gasoline, and the salty air coming through open windows. People travel to the provinces, to relatives, to work, to errands that cannot be done online, because the internet here is a luxury. Maria sits by the window. She is going to visit her aunt in a small town a few hours from the capital. She says she wants a break from nighttime Havana, but in truth she just needs a change of rhythm, to see another Cuba, one without hotels and neon signs. The road passes sugarcane fields and small villages with houses painted in pale pastel colors. Children wave at the bus, old men sit in the shade of trees and watch the road, as if time moves slower here. The provincial town greets with silence. There are no crowds of tourists, no bars with live music every evening. There is a small market selling vegetables grown in nearby fields. There is a pharmacy with half-empty shelves. There is a school with peeling walls, where children still arrive in clean uniforms. Maria's aunt works as a teacher. Her classroom, old wooden desks, a blackboard with chalk marks from last week. She tells the children about the world beyond the island, but carefully, without idealizing, without promises she cannot guarantee. After class they drink coffee in the yard. Her aunt says, "In the capital it's harder, but here, there's quiet, and that's valuable too." Maria looks at the calm streets and thinks that every corner of Cuba has its own struggle. It just looks different. In the small-town hospital, Dr. Ernesto works. His office, an old desk, a few chairs, and a cabinet with a minimal supply of medicine. He's used to improvising, using what's available, fixing equipment when it breaks, and always finding words of encouragement for patients. After his shift, he plays guitar in the local club. Music is his way to exhale, to forget the limitations that follow him at work. He laughs when tourists are surprised that a doctor can be a musician. In Cuba, everyone has several lives at once. Meanwhile in Havana, Luis meets an acquaintance just returned from abroad. He brought a suitcase with clothes, medicine, and chocolate for his family. His stories sound like another world: stable jobs, supermarkets without lines, scheduled transportation. But he admits, sometimes he misses Havana, the noise of the Malecon, the music that never stops even on the hardest days. In small apartments, families gather around phones to talk to those who left. Video calls are the new family dinners. Someone shows a new job, someone, a child who has grown, someone, a parcel that just arrived in the mail. Carlos receives an order for a trip outside the city. Tourists want to see the real life. He drives them to a small village, where people work in the fields, cows graze by the roads, children greet strangers as if they have known them all their lives. They stop by his relative's house. The hostess sets simple food on the table: rice, beans, fresh mango. The tourists are silent, understanding, this is not a show, this is reality. Conversation turns to laughter when someone tries to dance salsa on the dusty yard. Carlos watches them and thinks that real Cuba is not only about difficulties, but also about the ability to find joy in small things. Maria returns to Havana with a feeling of having seen another side of the island. The night greets her with the usual noise, but now she looks at everything differently. She knows, in the provinces, life is slower, but opportunities are even fewer. In the capital, more chances, but also more struggle. She stands again by the hotel, but this time she does not rush. She watches people, listens to music, talks to a musician playing the saxophone. She thinks about choices: to stay, to leave, to change professions, to start something new. Later that week, Luis receives an offer to work abroad for a few months. He hesitates: leave his family or take the chance. Carlos thinks about opening a small tourist school for retro car drivers. Maria enrolls in an online translation course taught by a teacher from Mexico. Life in Cuba: constant small decisions that can change everything. The final shot of this chapter, the Malecon at night. People sit on the stone promenade, watch the sea, listen to the waves. Someone laughs, someone is silent, someone makes plans. Headlights slip across the water, music plays from afar, and the city breathes, slowly, stubbornly, alive. Cuba keeps moving forward, even when it seems that time has stopped. Cuba is a country of contrasts. Here, tourists see colorful facades and retro cars, yet nearby, empty shelves and long lines. Here, young people dream of leaving, but never forget their roots. Here, music plays even when the electricity is out and the refrigerator is empty. This is not a glamorous country. This is a country of living people who laugh, work, dream, and survive every day. Every glance on the street, every encounter with a neighbor, every night by the Malecon, all are part of a story that postcards cannot show. Cuba may not seem easy, but it is beautiful in its truth. And those who live here know, real life is not about comfort, but about strength, hope, and the ability to keep moving forward, even when it feels like the whole world is against you.